A man was walking slowly near a government building. He didn't seem in a hurry. He wore simple clothes, had a backpack on his shoulder, and a serious look on his face. He wasn't bothering anyone. He didn't look suspicious. Still, to police. Officers standing nearby noticed him and started watching closely. One of the officers whispered to the other, "That guy looks out of place." The second officer replied, "Yeah, he's not doing anything wrong, but something feels off." They kept staring at the man. The man saw them too, but didn't react. He just kept walking, minding his own business. But the officers decided to stop him anyway. They walked up to him and said, "Excuse me, sir. Can we talk to you for a moment?" The man stopped and nodded.
"Sure,"
he said calmly. "Can we see your ID?" the officer asked. "I don't have it on me right now," the man replied, politely. "I didn't think I'd need it just for a walk." The officers looked at each other. One of them said, "That's a problem." The man stayed calm. "Why is that a problem? Did I do something wrong?" Now the tone changed. The officers didn't like being questioned. They asked more things. "Where are you from? What are you doing here? Why don't you have your ID?" Man answered honestly and simply, "I'm just walking, getting fresh air. I live a few blocks from here." But the officers didn't seem satisfied. More police arrived. People on the street started noticing. Some stopped to watch. Others pulled out phones and began recording. The man stayed quiet and respectful. After a few minutes of questions, one officer stepped forward and said, "Sir, we're going to have to take you in for questioning. Am I under arrest?" The man asked, "We're just going to talk." The officer replied, "But you said I didn't do anything wrong." The man reminded him. "Come with us," the officer said firmly. The man didn't resist. He didn't shout or fight. He simply put his hands behind his back and allowed himself to be handcuffed. Everyone watching looked confused. Some people whispered, "Why are they arresting him?" Others said, "He didn't do anything." A little boy holding his mother's hand asked, "Mommy, why are they taking that man?" She shook her head. "I don't know, honey." At the police station, things got even stranger. The man was placed in a room by himself. Officers came in and out, asking the same questions again and again. "What's your name? Where's your ID? What were you doing outside that building?" Each time he gave the same calm answers. "I told you. My name is David. I lived nearby. I was just walking." One officer got frustrated. "You're hiding something. We know it. Just admit it." David looked at him and said, "I don't know what you think I've done, but I haven't done anything." Meanwhile, the police ran his name through their system, but nothing strange came up. No criminal record, no open cases, no warning signs. Still, they weren't convinced. They thought he might be lying about who he was. One rookie officer, a young woman named Officer Brooks, started to feel uneasy. She looked at David through the glass window. He wasn't nervous. He wasn't angry. He just looked patient, like he was waiting for something. She turned to her partner and said, "Are we sure we're doing the right thing? He doesn't seem dangerous." The partner shrugged. "You never know. People can surprise you." But Officer Brooks couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't right. She went to the computer and tried searching again. That's when things started to get strange. David, still in the room, sat quietly. He looked around the small Space Walls camera table he had been here before, not this exact room, but rooms like this. And each time, he had kept his cool. Today was no different. In his mind, he counted seconds. He knew it wouldn't be long now. Back in the station, a supervisor was called in. Something wasn't matching in the records. A red alert appeared. And then the screen froze. "That's odd," the supervisor said. "This file is restricted." Why would a civilian's file be locked? Another officer replied, maybe he's not a civilian. Now the station was tense. Everyone felt it. Something about this man didn't add up, but not in the way they expected. And David was just waiting. The arrest that began as something small was now turning into something much, much bigger. And nobody was ready for what they were about to find out. The air inside the police station was getting heavy. Not because of noise or chaos, because of something no one could quite explain. The man they had arrested, David, still sat silently in the interview room, hands resting calmly on the table, posture straight. He didn't look scared. He didn't ask for a lawyer. He didn't ask to leave. He just waited. Outside the room, the officers were confused. Is he military? One officer asked another. No ID, no phone, no wallet, no panic. Who walks around like that these days? Officer Brooks, the youngest among them, sat at her desk going through reports again. Her screen showed a big red alert from earlier. Access restricted. Federal clearance required. She had never seen that before, not for a regular citizen. Not for anyone. A quiet chill ran down her spine. This guy's different, she whispered to herself. Meanwhile, Sergeant Daniels, a more experienced officer, wasn't impressed. He's just playing a game. These guys love attention. He's probably a wannabe. Maybe ex-military or some YouTuber trying to go viral. But the longer David sat in silence, the more their certainty began to fade. A man playing games, usually, can't stay calm forever, but this man. He looked like he had all the time in the world. A few officers joked to ease the awkwardness. Maybe he's a robot. Or an alien. Maybe we just arrested Batman. The jokes made people laugh, but deep down, nobody was fully at ease. David's behavior didn't match any pattern. He wasn't angry. He wasn't nervous. He wasn't trying to explain himself. He was just waiting like he knew something they didn't. Finally, Sergeant Daniels walked into the room with a fake smile. "All right, David," he said, sitting across the table. "Let's try this again." David looked up. "You don't have ID. You don't have anything on you. That's suspicious. Wouldn't you agree?" David tilted his head slightly. "Is walking suspicious now?" Daniel's smile faded. "You know what I mean? You were near a government building, alone, watching people. That's reason enough to stop you." David didn't argue. "And arrest me?" Daniels leaned forward. "You're not under arrest yet, but you're not going anywhere until we know who you are." There was a long pause. Then David looked him in the eyes and said, "You already know who I am. You just don't know how you know me yet." Daniels didn't respond. He stood up, annoyed, and walked out. Back in the main office, Officer Brooks tried to run another search. This time she used a secure federal search tool she'd only seen used once during training. When she entered David's name again, a single line of text appeared on the screen. "Do not engage classified individual contact, immediate SUPRV." So she froze. Her mouth went dry. She quickly called her lieutenant, who called the captain, who then called someone even higher. Within 10 minutes, the entire mood inside the station had changed. No one said much. Radios went silent. Phones stopped ringing. All eyes kept drifting back to that small room with the calm man inside. Officer Brooks walked slowly past the interview room, trying to peek inside. David looked up and gave her a small, knowing smile like he knew she had just read something she wasn't supposed to. She quickly turned away. In the break room, a few officers started whispering. "Did you see her face? She looked like she saw a ghost. What if he's some undercover spy? What if we messed up? Bad." One of them looked genuinely worried. "Do you think we'll get in trouble for this?" Meanwhile, back in the room, David slowly stood up and walked to the one-way mirror. He looked straight into it, as if he could see through it, see all of them. And then he spoke softly. "They'll be here soon." The officers watching from the other side froze. Did he just? He knew we were watching. Sergeant Daniels, trying to keep control, shouted, "Get him back in the chair." But David had already returned to his seat, calm as ever. Minutes later, the station phone rang. The captain picked it up. The voice on the other end didn't introduce themselves. "This is a federal matter. You're to keep the man in custody. Do not question him further. Do not release him. And under no circumstances are you to contact the media." Then the line went dead. The captain turned to everyone and said just one word: "Lockdown." Now, everyone in the station knew something huge was happening. The man they thought was just some guy without ID had triggered a federal lockdown. No one was laughing anymore. No one doubted his calmness now. Everyone was just waiting. And David, he had always known this moment was coming. Clues in the system, it was quiet for a police station. Phones had stopped ringing. Radios were turned down. Officers were whispering instead of talking. Even the coffee machine had been unplugged. Something felt wrong. Not dangerous, but heavy. The kind of silence that makes your skin prickle. David was still in the interview room, sitting in the same spot. His hands were now resting flat on the table. He hadn't moved much in over an hour. He didn't ask for food. He didn't ask for water. He didn't ask what was going on. He didn't have to. In the main room, Officer Brooks sat frozen in front of her computer. The federal alert on the screen still blinked in red. "Do not engage classified individual contact immediate supervisor." She had never seen a warning like that before. Not in real life. Not even in training. For a moment, she thought it might be some kind of error. Maybe the system glitched, but the alert didn't go away. If anything, it looked like more files were being locked in real time. David's digital footprint was disappearing right in front of her. She clicked again. Another message popped up. "Access denied, encrypted identity. Level 7 clearance." REQIR2 Officer Brooks turned to Sergeant Daniels, who was pacing nearby. "Sir," she said, trying to keep her voice steady, "I think we need someone from higher up. This isn't just a normal ID case. Its entire record is hidden." Daniels rolled his eyes. "Maybe he hacked the system. Maybe he's pulling some stunt. You watch too many spy movies." Brooks didn't argue. She just turned her screen slightly, showing the blinking warnings and the lockdown orders. Daniel squinted, then leaned in. His face changed. "That's not normal," he said quietly. Across the room, the police captain was already on the phone. "Yes, he's here, still calm. No resistance. Yes, we followed the procedure. No, we didn't touch him. We didn't know who he was. We thought he didn't finish the sentence." Back at the computer, Brooks tried one more thing. She remembered a training module that once mentioned ghost profiles, people with erased public identities. She opened an internal tool used for background checks on people tied to sensitive operations military. Federal Witness Protection, undercover agents. She typed David and the partial birth date he had given earlier. The screen flashed. Match found, access limited code. PHANTOM. Suddenly, a new screen opened on its own. A photo of David appeared, but it looked older. The same eyes, the same expression. Below the photo was a short message. Operation status, classified last. Seen deep cover out of contact, do not interfere. Federal agency has been notified. Brooks covered her mouth with her hand. Her heart was racing. "He's not just someone," she whispered. One of the officers beside her leaned in. "What is he then?" She shook her head. "I don't know. but he's not supposed to exist. Inside the room, David looked up straight into the camera mounted on the wall. He gave a slow, almost amused smile, as if he could feel everything falling into place. At that same moment, a strange sound came from the parking lot. 2 black SUVs pulled up fast. They weren't local police. They had no markings. 4 men stepped out, dressed in dark suits, sunglasses, earpieces, silent, serious. One of them walked in, flashed a badge no one recognized, and spoke firmly. "Room 3, no one follows." The entire station went still. The man walked down the hall, opened the door, and entered. David didn't flinch. He simply nodded. They exchanged no words, just a silent glance, like old teammates recognizing each other after a long time. Then the door shut. From the outside, no one could hear what was said. Not even the camera picked it up. The audio had been cut remotely. Sergeant Daniels turned to Brooks. "What did we just get ourselves into?" She stared at the dark hallway, her voice barely a whisper. "I think we just arrested someone who doesn't officially exist." And in that moment, they all realized something terrifying. It wasn't David who was in trouble. It was them. Officer Brooks couldn't sleep that night, even hours after the mysterious black SUVs had taken David away. Her mind was spinning. She kept hearing his calm voice, seeing the alert on her screen, remembering the eerie silence that fell over the silence. "My only lipstick, ruby kiss, only ruby kiss, has a luxurious kiss, has the luxurious. How lolly kiss, how lies, my station." After the men in suits left, it didn't make sense. Who was he? Why was his record hidden behind so many locked files? Why did federal agents arrive within minutes, and why were they the ones giving orders? The captain told everyone not to speak about the incident. No reports, no emails, not even a mention. In the daily log, "Pretend it didn't happen," he said. "For your own good." But Brooks couldn't pretend. Something about David's eyes stayed with her, calm, focused, like a man who had seen things, maybe even survived things that most people couldn't imagine. The next day, after her shift ended, she went home and powered up her personal laptop. She knew she was breaking protocol, but curiosity had taken over. She didn't want to expose him. She just wanted to understand what really happened. She started searching. His face, his name, his voice. She used every tool she could think of: reverse image search, audio fingerprinting, even obscure news archives from foreign countries. Hours passed. Nothing. It was like David had never existed. But then, she found something, an old news article from 5 years ago, buried deep in a military blog that had since been taken offline. A headline caught her eye. "Elite U.S. recon officer presumed dead in Middle East operation." She clicked it. The article was short, grainy, and clearly scrubbed of any real details. But there was a small photo, blurry, almost useless, except the eyes, same, calm, sharp, steady eyes. Brooks' heart skipped. She read the article again. It described a special operation gone wrong. An elite recon team went deep into hostile territory on an intelligence mission. Only 3 bodies were recovered. 1 soldier was never found, presumed dead. The military didn't release his name publicly due to the mission's sensitivity. But a comment below the article mentioned ACODENAME.phantom-6. Brooks typed that codename into a different search engine. Nothing. Then she tried it with quotation marks and added the word survivor. Finally, she found something. A photo posted anonymously in a forum years ago showed a dusty uniform on the ground, stained with dried blood. The tag on the uniform was visible for just a moment, half torn. The visible part, Vid Brooks, covered her mouth. It couldn't be. She leaned back in her chair, trying to breathe. If this was real, David wasn't just a spy. He wasn't just a soldier. He was part of something deeper, a mission that was never supposed to be known, and a man who was never supposed to return. She thought back to the arrest. The moment he was cuffed, he hadn't struggled. He had waited. Why? Maybe because he knew someone would eventually find out who he really was. Maybe because he knew they weren't ready. Back at the station, Sergeant Daniels was pacing. He'd been silent ever since David was taken. The jokes had stopped. The confidence had vanished. He knew, deep down, they had messed up. He pulled out a dusty file from his locker. Years ago, he'd done private security near a military base. He remembered strange names, disappearances, and whispers of two soldiers who didn't officially exist. He flipped through his old notes and found one phrase he hadn't thought about in years. Phantom clearance. If you ever meet one, don't ask questions, walk away. Daniels closed the folder slowly. It was real. It's all of it. They had arrested someone not just above their rank, but outside their world entirely. That night, he poured himself a drink and looked out the window. The city lights blinked below, unaware of the secret they had almost uncovered. Somewhere out there, David was walking free again. Or maybe back to wherever people like him go. Quiet places, shadowy missions, empty names, but for the officers at the station, one thing had become clear. They hadn't arrested a man. They had disturbed a ghost, and ghosts always come with a story. The police station felt like a different place now. No one mentioned David's name. Not in reports, not in conversation, not even in passing. But the silence didn't bring peace. It only brought weight, like the whole building was holding its breath, afraid that one wrong word might trigger something none of them could handle. Officer Brooks came in early the next day. She hadn't slept. Her mind kept replaying the photos she had seen, the news article, the phrase, Phantom 6. She kept asking herself the same question. How did we not see it? How did we arrest someone like that and treat him like just some guy? The other officers were quiet too. Some avoided eye contact. Others stared blankly at their computers, pretending to work. Nobody was ready for what had happened. And worse, nobody knew what was coming next. At 9:17 a.m., the silence shattered. The station's emergency phone, almost never used, began to ring. Loud, sharp, echoing across the quiet space like an alarm. The captain rushed to answer it. "This is Captain Rains. Who's calling?" The voice on the other end wasn't loud. It wasn't angry, but it was cold. Professional, like someone who'd given this speech before. "Captain Rains, this is a secure federal line. You are receiving this call because of your station's recent handling of a classified individual. We are not here to punish. We are here to correct. You and your team are to follow the next steps exactly. Is that understood?" Rains swallowed hard. "Yes, understood." "Good. First, you will gather every piece of documentation related to the individual arrested at 14:06 hours, 2 days ago. Every note, every video, every login, every record. Okay. Second, you will delete all backups. You will wipe every local and cloud file from your system under our supervision. You will say nothing to press, nothing to family, and nothing to your officers except what we authorize." Rain's hand trembled slightly. "Got it?" "Anything else?" "Yes. One more thing." There was a pause. "Tell your people they're lucky. The man you brought in has chosen not to take action. That decision is not always offered." The line went dead. Rains lowered the phone. His face was pale. He turned to look at his team, all watching him from across the room. His voice cracked. "Slightly, clear the room. Lock every door. We're doing a full purge." The officers looked at each other in disbelief. You mean delete everything? One asked. Everything, Rains said. But that's illegal, isn't it? Rains shook his head. It's already out of our hands. We're not in control anymore. Officer Brooks stood frozen. Her heartbeat was loud in her ears. She had already saved one small copy of the file on a personal drive the night before. Just a tiny image. Just a few lines of text. She hadn't meant any harm. She just needed to know the truth. Now, she wasn't sure if even that small file had put her at risk. While the team began erasing logs and shutting down systems, Brooks slipped away into the hallway, pretending to check her phone. But in truth, she was staring at the only photo left of David's face. The calm eyes, the slight smile. The silence that now made so much sense. Then, something happened she didn't expect. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She hesitated, but answered. Hello. There was a short silence. Then the voice came. Not cold. Not threatening. Just ... steady. .com. Your curious Officer Brooks. She froze. It was him. You looked deeper than they told you. And now you understand, don't you? She didn't speak. I'm not calling to scare you. Just want to say thank you for seeing me. Not just the uniform I wasn't wearing. Her hand shook. Why me? She whispered. Because you asked the right questions, and you didn't look away. She took a breath. Are you safe? A pause. I'm always somewhere between safe and gone. That's the job. The line went quiet for a moment. Then, tell your captain, the silence was my gift. Next time, someone else might not be so forgiving. The call ended. Brooks stood alone in the hallway, the phone still to her ear, her mind racing. David hadn't just disappeared. He was watching. And somewhere in the shadows, he had made a decision not just to forgive, but to warn. 2 days after the arrest, the station felt like a ghost house. All evidence of David's presence was wiped clean. Reports deleted. Footage erased. His name never logged. It was as if he had never been there at all. But everyone remembered. Especially Officer Brooks. She remembered the call. She remembered his voice, calm, thoughtful, too steady for a man who had been handcuffed just hours earlier. She remembered his final words. The silence was my gift. And now that silence was louder than ever. Then, something happened that no one expected. A package arrived at the front desk. No return address. No stamp. No delivery driver. Just a small black envelope with silver writing on the front dot, too. Officer Brooks. She opened it slowly. Inside was a single photo, folded in half. She unfolded it and froze. It was him, David, wearing a dark, tactical uniform. But not just any uniform. This one had no flag, no name, and no visible rank. Only a patch. A faded emblem with a symbol that didn't belong to any known military group. But Brooks had seen something like it once, in training, in a restricted folder she hadn't even been supposed to open. It was the symbol for Phantom Division, a group whispered about in high-level security circles. Officially, it didn't exist. Unofficially, it handled missions no one else could. Operations outside the lines. Soldiers who had no home. Men who were ghosts. She flipped the photo over. One line was handwritten on the back. You saw me when I wasn't meant to be seen. That matters more than you know. D. Brooks didn't speak for a long time. She just stared at the photo. That same day, cross town, an internal security breach was reported at a classified government database. No files were stolen. No systems were damaged. But one thing had changed. One profile had been unlocked for exactly 47 seconds. The profile belonged to a man named David Keynes. Age. Unknown status, presumed dead clearance. Level 9 Phantom last recorded mission. Redacted survival. Probability, 0.03% current location. Unknown whoever opened the file was never identified, and just as quickly as it appeared, it vanished again. But something was different now. Some truths can't be erased. Back at the police station, Captain Rain stood in his office, staring at the wall. He had spent 20 years on the force. He thought he had seen everything, but nothing had prepared him for this. He had arrested a man whose name couldn't be found. A man who left without a single fingerprint, but whose presence still shook every officer in that building. Rains finally spoke out loud to no one in particular. We treated him like a suspect, and he was probably the only real hero that's ever walked through our doors. Outside the captain's office, Officer Brooks gathered her things quietly. She slipped the photo into a folder labeled private. She didn't know why she was keeping it. Maybe as a reminder. Maybe as proof for herself that she hadn't imagined any of it. And then, as she walked to her car, something caught her eye. A black car was parked across the street. It wasn't moving. Windows tinted. No plates. Just sitting there. She didn't panic. She just looked at it, then gave a small nod. A moment later, the car drove off. She didn't need to guess who it was. David wasn't just alive. He was watching. Not as a threat, not as an enemy, but as a silent guardian. Someone who had returned from the shadows, not to get revenge, but to test the system, and that test. Most of them had failed, but not all.